Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hello again.
So today we're not just doing a biography. We're not just doing a history lesson.
No, this is something else entirely.
I feel like we're performing an autopsy on the modern soul.
That's a heavy way to start.
Yeah.
But, feels pretty accurate.
I really mean it, though. If you've ever, and I mean ever, sat in a fluorescent lit office staring at a spreadsheet, and you just feel like your actual human spirit is being slowly crushed by a system that demands infinite efficiency but offers like zero meaning.
Right.
Well, today's subject saw you coming.
He absolutely did. He saw you coming from about, 120 years ago?
We are talking about Max Weber, a man whose name, it usually gets dropped in Sociology 101.
Yeah, right alongside Marx and Durkheim, the big three.
Exactly. But I think, and I have a feeling you agree, he's actually the most relevant of those three for the specific kind of malaise we live in right now.
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Marx diagnosed the struggle over resources, over money. Durkheim diagnosed how society holds together, what he called social solidarity. But Weber diagnosed the mind.
The mind, okay.
He diagnosed the specific, peculiar, anxious psychology that drives the modern world. He's the reason we even have a word for why we feel disenchanted.
Disenchanted, yes. That's the key word. We are going to circle back to that a lot.
We have to. It's central to everything.
So we have a massive stack of sources today, biographies, his major essays on religion, his political lectures, and, of course, the comprehensive breakdowns of his methodology.
A mountain of material.
And our mission, really, is to figure out how he ended up in what he called the iron cage, and how, in this really weird twist of fate, religion might have accidentally invented the corporate rat race.
It is the ultimate story of unintended consequences. I mean, we are going to draw a straight line from the fire and brimstone theology of the 16th century directly to the quarterly earnings report of the 21st century. It sounds crazy, but the logic is all there.
It does sound crazy. But before we get into the Protestant ethic and all that heavy theory, we have to start with the man himself.
You have to.
Because I was reading through the source material on his life, and frankly, I was shocked. I pictured this, dusty, monocled German professor boring his students to death.
The stereotype.
Yeah. But his life was, well, it was a psychological thriller. It was intense.
It really was.
Yeah.
And you cannot separate Weber's work from his life. It's impossible. The tension he wrote about, this massive clash between the material world and the spiritual world, that wasn't just some academic concept for him.
No.
It was the air he breathed in his own dining room. It was his family life.
Okay, so let's set that scene. 1864, we're in Erfurt, Prussia. The Weber household. This is not a happy-go-lucky family unit we're talking about, is it?
Not in the slightest, no. It's a house divided in the most literal sense you can imagine.
Okay.
On one side, you have the father, Max Weber Sr. He's a lawyer, a city councilor. Later, he's a member of the Reichstag.
So a big deal. A successful man.
A very successful man. He's a national liberal, which means he's part of the establishment of Bismarck's New Germany.
And based on the notes, he's a guy who likes the good life.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
He's a bon vivant, a man of earthly pleasures. He enjoys power. He enjoys his status. He enjoys a good meal, good drink.
He's a pragmatist, totally.
He represents the establishment satisfied, powerful, secular, and not particularly concerned with any deep moral agonizing. He's a man of the world.
Okay, so that's Dad. And then in the other corner, weighing in with a whole lot of religious guilt, is his mother.
Pauline Sallenstein.
Yeah.
And she is the polar opposite of her husband in every conceivable way.
Where does she come from?
Her background has these French Huguenot roots. So she is a devout, intense Calvinist.
Calvinist. Okay, that's another one of those words we're going to have to really unpack later. But for her, what did that mean day to day?
It meant a life of asceticism.
Self-denial.
Complete self-denial. Yeah. She believed in duty, in charity, in maintaining an absolute moral purity. She looked at her husband's enjoyment of all these earthly pleasures, his parties, his political maneuvering, and she found it shallow.
Empty.
Empty. Maybe even sinful.
So you have young Max, he's the eldest of 8 kids, sitting at the dinner table, and it's like a morality play.
It is.
On his right is Dad saying, eat, drink, and gain power, and on his left is Mom saying, deny yourself, serve the poor, and constantly worry about the state of your soul.
Exactly. And Max is not a normal kid. He's a genius, a prodigy. So he's not just seeing this. He's absorbing everything. He's analyzing it.
And what does he see?
He sees that his father treats his mother dismissively. He's an authoritarian patriarch who doesn't respect her spiritual depth at all.
Okay.
But at the same time, he also sees that his mother's world is well, it's suffocating. It's kind of joyless.
So he's caught. The notes mention he internalized this. He didn't just watch it from a distance. He felt ripped in half by it.
He did. He later called it the Faustian conflict in his own soul. He had these two warring natures inside him.
He wanted the success of his father.
The intellectual power, the worldly success, absolutely. But he felt the moral imperative, that nagging conscience of his mother.
And this conflict, it didn't just make him anxious.
No, it made him brilliant, but it also set a ticking time bomb in his psyche that was just waiting to go off.
Let's talk about that brilliance for a second, because the sources have an anecdote that is just. It's insane. He was bored in school.
Bored is a massive understatement. The teachers just didn't challenge him. So while the teacher's lecturing about whatever, 13-year-old Max is secretly reading under his desk.
Okay, but reading what? Not comic books.
No, not comic books.
Yes.
He's reading the complete 40-volume edition of Goethe.
40 volumes?
40 volumes. And he's not just skimming them, he's absorbing them. I mean, at age 13, he's writing these long historical essays, one on the history of the Holy Roman Empire, another on the papacy, and giving them to his parents as Christmas gifts.
Nothing says, Merry Christmas, Mom and Dad, like a dissertation on the papal schism.
It just shows you the level of intellect we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
But here's the twist. When he finally escapes this high-pressure, intellectual, tense household and goes to university.
Heidelberg, Berlin, Göttingen.
Right. He doesn't become a monk. He doesn't become a scholar right away. He swings hard in the other direction.
He goes full dad.
He goes full dad. This is his wild years, period.
Tell me about this dueling fraternity.
Okay, so he joins a Burschenschaft Alemannia. Now, when we say dueling fraternity, you can't think of playful fencing with masks on. This is the Menser.
And what is that?
It's ritualized combat. You stand there, mostly still, with very little protective gear on your face, and you let someone swipe at you with a sharp blade. The goal isn't to kill the other person.
What is the goal?
The goal is to stand your ground, not flinch, and take the scar. The scar was a badge of honor.
That sounds absolutely barbaric.
It was a rite of passage for the German elite. It was about proving you had character, that you could take a hit. So Max drank heavily, like gallons of beer. He fenced, and he got the famous dueling scar on his left cheek. If you look at photos of him, you can see it clearly.
So he's desperately trying to be the man of the world. He's trying to be his dad. Look at me, I'm tough, I'm scarred, I can drink you under the table.
Precisely. He's performing his father's version of masculinity. But he couldn't sustain it.
Why not?
Because his mother's voice was always in the back of his head, that Calvinist conscience. So as he matured, finished his PhD, started his academic career, the pendulum just swung all the way back.
And he gets married around this time.
Yes, in 1893, he marries his second cousin, Marianne Schnicker.
And Marianne is not just a footnote here, is she? She's a major player in his story.
Huge, a huge player. She was a brilliant intellectual in her own right, a feminist activist, an author. Their marriage was, well, it was complex. The sources all suggest it was a companionate marriage, a partnership of minds. It was likely unconsummated. They never had children, but she was his intellectual partner.
And as he settles down with Marianne, he starts to identify more with his mother.
More and more. He starts to see his father through his mother's eyes, and he starts to really resent him, the tyranny, the dismissal of her inner life.
And this all leads us to the breaking point, the moment where the rubber band that has been stretching for 30 years finally snaps.
The summer of 1897. This is the moment. Max is 33 years old. He's a celebrated professor at Heidelberg. His parents come to visit, and the tension that has been building for decades finally just explodes.
What happened?
Max witnesses his father treating his mother badly again, disrespectfully. And this time, he doesn't stay silent. He doesn't just swallow it.
He confronts him.
Oh, it was a massive shouting row. Max effectively throws his father out of the house. He sides completely and totally with his mother. It was the great Oedipal moment, the son finally overthrowing the father. He told him essentially, "You have tyrannized this woman for the last time."
And the awful tragedy of it is, they never fixed it.
No. His father left, and he died 2 months later while traveling, alone, without any reconciliation.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine the weight of that guilt.
It destroyed him. It absolutely destroyed him. Max Weber, the rising star of German academia, completely collapsed. And we aren't talking about a few weeks of sadness or a bad mood.
No.
We are talking about a total, debilitating nervous breakdown that lasted for 5 years.
The details in the sources are just harrowing. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't teach, he couldn't even read.
He described a constant feeling of his head rotating. He would sit by the window for hours on end, just picking at his fingernails, staring at the trees. The man who read 40 volumes of Goethe in middle school couldn't focus on a single paragraph in a newspaper.
And he had to give up his job.
He resigned his professorship. He spent years in and out of sanatoriums. He and Marianne traveled to Italy, to Corsica, just trying to find a way for him to exist, to quiet his mind.
It's so interesting, though. He's literally trapped in his own mind. He's paralyzed. And yet this paralysis is exactly what he ends up writing about later, but on a societal scale.
That is the crucial insight. That's it right there. When he finally emerges from this darkness around 1903, and it's a slow, painful emergence, the work he produces is completely different.
How so?
Before the breakdown, he was writing about, Roman agrarian history and the legal structures of medieval trading companies. Very technical stuff.
Right.
After the breakdown, he writes The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. He writes about the torture of the human soul. He had to live through his own personal iron cage of depression before he could diagnose the iron cage of society.
So he comes back. He becomes an editor at a major social science journal, and he starts developing a whole new way of looking at the world.
A new toolkit.
This brings us to his methodology. Now, I know that sounds dry, but stick with us because Weber really changed the game here.
He really did. At the time, you basically had two camps in social science. You had the positivists who thought sociology should be just like physics.
Find the laws, calculate the data, predict the outcome.
Exactly. Humans are just atoms bumping into each other. If you have enough data, you can predict everything.
And Weber said, no, that's completely wrong. Humans are messy.
Right. He argued for an anti-positivist approach. He introduced this concept of Verstehen.
Which is German for understanding.
Yes, but it's a very specific kind of understanding. It means interpretive understanding. He said you cannot explain a human action from the outside, like a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
You have to understand the subjective meaning the person attaches to their own action.
I liked the wood chopping example from the notes. It makes it really clear.
Yeah, that's a great one.
If I see a guy in a forest chopping wood, physics can tell me about the velocity of the axe and the muscle mass he's using. But that doesn't tell me what is actually happening.
Not at all. Is he chopping wood because he's an employee being paid a wage? That's one social reality.
Okay.
Is he chopping wood because he's furious at his boss and he's venting his frustration on the log?
A totally different meaning.
Completely different. Or is he chopping wood because his family is freezing inside and he needs to heat the house? Or maybe he's chopping wood because it's a traditional ritual his people have done for centuries. The physical action is identical in all four cases.
But the social reality is completely different depending on the why.
Exactly. So Weber is saying we have to get inside the head of the subject. We have to empathize. We have to understand their motivations.
And he tried to categorize those motivations.
He did. He broke down all social action into four basic types.
What are they?
First, you have affectional action that's driven by emotion. I slap you because I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
Pure feeling.
Got it.
Second is traditional action, driven by habit and custom. I eat turkey on Thanksgiving because that's just what we do. I don't think about it. Third, and this is important, is value rational action. This is action driven by a moral code or a belief regardless of the consequences.
Like what?
Like a captain who goes down with the ship because a captain must do that. It's not logical in a practical sense, it's suicide, but it adheres to a code of honor.
Okay, value rational. And the last one?
Instrumental rational action. This is driven by pure calculation. I do X because it is the most efficient, most direct way to achieve my goal Y. It's all about means and ends.
And his big overarching thesis about history was that we are moving relentlessly toward number 4.
Yes, that's the story of modernity. Instrumental rationality is conquering everything. The other three, emotion, tradition, values, they're being stripped away, seen as inefficient. We are becoming calculating machines.
And to measure this shift, he gave us another tool, the ideal type.
Right. And this one really confuses people.
Because when he says ideal type, he doesn't mean the ideal husband or the ideal vacation. It's not about something being perfect.
No, not ideal as in good or desirable. It's ideal as in existing purely in the world of ideas. It's a mental construct, a pure concept.
Like a caricature.
That's a great way to put it. It's a caricature or a measuring stick. Let's say I want to study bureaucracy. I would create an ideal type of a perfect bureaucracy.
So one with perfect rules, perfect hierarchy, no human error.
Exactly. It's a logically consistent, exaggerated version. Does this perfect bureaucracy exist anywhere in reality? Of course not. Reality is always messy.
So what's the point?
The point is, by holding up the ideal type against the real DMV or the real corporation, I can see where the cracks are. I can measure the deviation. It's a tool for clarity.
A benchmark.
A benchmark,
Yeah.
exactly. And he used these tools for seeing the types of action, the ideal type, to tackle his biggest question.
Which one?
He looked around the Western world in 1900 and he asked a very simple question. Why are the people with all the money, the business leaders, the owners of capital, the most skilled workers, why are they so overwhelmingly Protestant?
And this leads us to the heavy hitter, the big one, the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. This is the essay that really put him on the map.
It's one of the most famous and most controversial arguments in all of sociology.
Because he was picking a fight with the ghost of Karl Marx.
A huge fight. Marx had famously said that economics drives everything. Your economic system, the base, determines your culture, your religion, your art, the superstructure.
Change who owns the factories and you'll change what people believe.
Right. Weber came along and flipped it. He said, hold on, no. Sometimes a religious idea can fundamentally change the economy.
But the connection seems so unlikely. I mean, Christianity, especially the Bible, is not exactly a pro-wealth document.
Not at all.
It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. How do you possibly get from that to, Jeff Bezos?
You have to follow this very specific and very strange chain of psychological and theological logic. And it starts with the Reformation. First, you get Martin Luther. And Luther changes a key concept, the idea of the calling, or in German, Beruf.
What was the idea before Luther?
Before Luther, if you wanted to be super holy, a truly devout Christian, you became a monk or a nun. You left the world.
The world was dirty, the monastery was clean and closer to God.
Right. Luther came along and said, no, that's wrong. God has placed you where you are in the world for a reason. If you're a farmer, be the best farmer you can be to the glory of God. If you're a mother, change diapers to the glory of God.
So he made everyday work a holy activity.
Sanctified worldly labor. That's step one. But Luther was still pretty traditional. He didn't want people getting rich or climbing the social ladder. He just wanted them to do their duty.
So who's step two?
Enter John Calvin. And this is where the psychological horror story really begins.
Okay.
Calvinism and the Puritan sects that grew out of it, they doubled down on a terrifying doctrine called predestination.
This is the idea that the guest list for heaven was written before the universe even began.
Yes. God, in his infinite wisdom, has already decided if you are one of the saved, the elect, or one of the damned. And this is the crucial part. There is absolutely nothing you can do to change that decision.
Nothing.
Nothing. You can't pray your way in. You can't buy your way in with good works. The decision is made, final, and irreversible.
That's terrifying. If I actually believed that, I would be a nervous wreck 24/7.
It created what Weber called unprecedented inner loneliness. But more than that, it created salvation panic.
Salvation panic.
Imagine being a Puritan in, say, 1650s New England. You are sitting in a cold church listening to a 3-hour sermon about the fires of hell, and you have no way of knowing if you are safe. The psychological pressure was unbearable. People needed to know. They were desperate for a sign.
So how do you get a sign from a silent God who's already made up his mind?
Well, the pastors and theologians who had to deal with these terrified congregations eventually started teaching a kind of workaround. They said, look, we can't change God's mind, but if you are one of the elect, surely you will act like it. The Holy Spirit will work through you, and your actions will show evidence of your salvation.
So if I'm lazy and sinful, that's probably a pretty bad sign.
A very bad sign. But if I am disciplined, if I work tirelessly in my calling, if I don't waste time on frivolous things, if my business is successful, that's not earning me salvation, but it is proof. It's evidence that God is with me.
So people started working like maniacs, not to earn salvation, but to prove to themselves and their community that they already had it.
It was a way to manage their anxiety. Every hour of hard, methodical work was a way to silence that screaming doubt in the back of their minds. But here's the second part of the equation, the real kicker.
Okay.
Calvinism also commanded extreme asceticism. You were forbidden from enjoying the fruits of your labor.
So no parties, no fancy clothes, no gambling, no theater, all that stuff was sinful.
All of it. So think about the math. You have a religious duty to work as hard as you possibly can, which means you are systematically accumulating wealth and making a profit.
Right.
But you are religiously forbidden from spending that profit on luxury or pleasure. You can't buy a yacht. You can't build a lavish mansion. You can't throw a big party. So what do you do with all the money?
You put it back into the business.
You reinvest it. You buy better loom, you hire another worker, you expand your shop so you can work even harder to make even more money, to have even more proof that you are one of the elect.
And voila.
Voila. You have the engine of rational capital accumulation. You have, as Weber called it, the spirit of modern capitalism.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. So it wasn't greed that started modern capitalism. It was religious anxiety.
It was worldly asceticism. Monks used to deny themselves pleasure out in the desert to get closer to God. The Puritans denied themselves pleasure in the counting house, in the workshop, for the very same reason.
But, and this is the really tragic part of Weber's whole story, we aren't Puritans anymore. I don't know many people who go to the office on Monday morning because they're worried about predestination.
And this is Weber's concept of the vanishing mediator. The religious belief was the booster rocket that got the spaceship of capitalism into orbit.
I like that analogy.
Once the system was up and running, once it was in orbit, the booster rocket, the religious motivation, just fell away.
Yeah.
It burned up in the atmosphere. But the behavior,
the compulsive work, the obsession with efficiency, the need to always accumulate more.
All of that remained. It became his own system with its own logic.
And that is the iron cage.
That's the iron cage. Or, as the German Stahlhartes Gehäuse is maybe better translated, the shell as hard as steel.
What did he write about it? There's a famous quote.
Yes, he wrote, "The Puritan wanted to work in a calling. We are forced to do so. We are born into this massive economic machine that demands we act like Puritans just to survive.
But we don't have the spiritual comfort that they had. We don't have the why.
We have the behavior without the belief. We are just running on the hamster wheel because the wheel is all there is. We're trapped."
That is incredibly bleak. It feels like we're just haunting the house that the Puritans built. We're going through the motions with none of the meaning.
It is bleak. Weber was, at heart, a pessimist. He saw this process of rationalization eating the entire world. And to prove it wasn't just a weird European fluke, he did these massive sprawling studies on other world religions.
Right. China, India, ancient Judaism. He basically treated them like control groups in a giant lab experiment.
That's a great way to think about it. He's asking, okay, if this is my hypothesis, let's test it. Look at China and India. These were huge advanced civilizations, way ahead of Europe for centuries. Why didn't they invent this specific brand of hypercapitalism?
So let's take China first. He wrote The Religion of China. What did he find there?
He looked at Confucianism. Now, Confucianism obviously values discipline, hard work, self-control, right?
Yeah.
But what was the goal? The goal of a Confucian gentleman was rational adjustment to the world. You wanted to fit gracefully into the existing cosmic and social order. You wanted harmony.
So you're not trying to, in modern tech bro terms, disrupt the market.
No. Disrupting the order for personal profit would be seen as vulgar. It would be ungentlemanly. You want to maintain the balance. The Puritans, on the other hand, sought rational mastery over the world. They wanted to bend it to God's will, to transform it. Different goals.
So no capitalist breakthrough in China, despite its advanced civilization. What about India?
In The Religion of India, he points to two massive barriers. The first and most obvious is the caste system.
Which is pretty much the ultimate barrier to a free market and social mobility.
It's the ultimate barrier. If you believe your occupation is rigidly determined by your birth, and that perfectly fulfilling your specific caste duty is the only path to a better rebirth in the next life.
You're not going to try to innovate. You're not going to try to become a CEO if you were born a potter.
Exactly. And that leads to the second point. The religious incentive system was fundamentally otherworldly. The whole goal was to escape the wheel of existence, to get out of this world, not to transform it for profit.
Whereas Western Christianity, especially in its Protestant form, became innerworldly. Fix this world, master this world.
Precisely. And Weber, in his study of ancient Judaism, actually traced the roots of that unique Western rationality all the way back to the ancient Jewish prophets.
How so?
He argued that their hostility to magic was a crucial first step. The prophets railed against idolatry, against nature spirits, against magic spells. They said there is no magic in the trees, no spirit in the river. There is only one God. He's transcendent way up there, separate from the world, and he demands ethical behavior, not magic rituals.
And that started the process of disenchantment.
Yes, that's the beginning of Entzaubern, literally demagicking. By clearing the world of spirits and magic, they pave the way for science and calculation. If the tree isn't a magical spirit, well, then I can chop it down and measure it and turn it into lumber.
Disenchantment. That is the feeling of the modern world. We know how everything works, but it feels empty.
We traded mystery for mastery. We know that lightning is electrical discharge. It's not Zeus throwing a thunderbolt. And that's great for building lightning rods and, not getting killed.
But it's bad for the soul.
It's bad for our sense of meaning. Weber said, the world is no longer a garden of spirits. It is a mechanism to be mastered.
And the ultimate tool of mastery in the modern world is bureaucracy. This is the part of Weber that feels the most personal to me, because I really hate bureaucracy.
Chuckles, everyone hates it. But Weber says it's absolutely unavoidable. Bureaucracy is just the organizational form of that instrumental rationality we were talking about earlier.
What are its key features?
A clear hierarchy, a system of written rules and procedures, expert training for officials, and the most important feature of all, impersonality.
Impersonality.
Weber said the perfect bureaucracy operates sine ira et studio, which is Latin for without anger and without fondness, without passion.
Which is exactly why a trip to the DMV is so soul-crushing.
Precisely. If you go to a bureaucrat and you say, please, you have to help me, I need this permit, my dog is sick, I'm having a terrible day, they are supposed to look at you blankly.
Because my emotions are irrational. They don't fit in the box on the form.
Your story, your humanity, it's irrelevant to the system. The system is designed to treat you as case number 74B, not as a human being. It treats everyone the same.
But Weber's point is that this is actually good, or at least technically efficient.
He says it's technically superior to all other forms of organization. He compared the rise of bureaucracy to a machine replacing hand labor. It is precise, it's steady, it's continuous, it's reliable.
And you need it.
If you want to run a massive modern state or a global corporation or an army, you need bureaucracy. You can't rely on the personal whims of a king or a local lord who might be in a bad mood that day. You need rules.
But the paradox is that the cost of this efficiency is our humanity. We become cogs in the machine.
That's his great fear. He prophesied a future dominated by specialists without spirit, sensualists without heart. He feared that the bureaucratic machine would become so perfect, so unbreakable, that we could never escape it or even change it. We'd just be little administrators in a gray world forever.
I think about modern things like the ATS, the applicant tracking systems for jobs.
Oh, perfect example.
You apply for a job and a human being doesn't even see your resume. An algorithm scans it for keywords. If you don't have the right keywords, you're just deleted. You don't exist.
That is pure, distilled Weber. It is the ultimate form of rational legal authority. It's efficient, it's fair in a cold mathematical sense, and it is completely and utterly dehumanizing.
So let's talk about who runs this machine. This leads us to his thinking on politics and the state. He had a very famous, very blunt definition of what a state is.
That's probably his most quoted line. The state is that human community that successfully claims a monopoly on the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory.
It's a brutal definition.
It is. He strips away all the flowery language about the will of the people or the common good or social contract. He says, no. At its core, the state is the only group of people who are allowed to kill you, jail you, or take your money by force without it being considered a crime.
If I lock you in my basement, it's called kidnapping. If the state does it, it's called prison.
Exactly. And that raises the next logical question. Why do we let them? Why do we obey? Why do we see their violence as legitimate? This brings us to his 3 types of legitimate authority.
Okay, what are they?
The first is traditional authority. We obey because we've always done it this way. It's based on habit, custom, the sanctity of the past.
Like a king or a tribal patriarch, the Queen of England.
Exactly. The second is charismatic authority. We obey not because of tradition, but because the leader is special. They have some extraordinary gift, some heroism or sanctity. They have charisma.
So a prophet like Jesus, or a warlord like Napoleon, or a demagogue like Hitler.
Yes. It's based on devotion to a specific person, and it's very powerful, but also very unstable. What happens when the charismatic leader dies?
The movement falls apart.
Or it has to be routinized and has to be turned into one of the other 2 forms. And the third form is the one we live in.
Rational legal authority.
Right. We don't obey the person. We obey the office. We obey the rules. I don't pay my taxes because I personally love the IRS commissioner.
You definitely don't.
Chuckles.
And?
I don't pay them because my ancestors always paid them. I pay my taxes because it is the law. And the person collecting them holds a legally appointed position. We obey the uniform, not the person in it.
And we live almost entirely in the rational legal world now.
Almost entirely. But Weber thought a purely rational legal system was boring and spiritually empty. It's stable, but it lacks fire. It lacks vision.
So what did he want?
He actually hopes for a mix. He wanted a strong parliament with its rational rules and debates, but he also wanted a strong, popularly elected president who could be a charismatic leader to energize the system and cut through the bureaucracy.
And this leads us to the dark, terrible irony of his political legacy. He helped write the Weimar Constitution in Germany after World War I.
He did. Germany had just lost the war. The Kaiser had fled. There was chaos. Weber was a nationalist. He wanted a strong, stable Germany. So he argued forcefully for something called Article 48.
The Emergency Powers Clause.
Exactly. He wanted a president who, in a crisis, could suspend the rules and cut through the parliamentary red tape to save the nation.
And then, a decade and a half later,
Adolf Hitler used that very same Article 48 to suspend civil liberties, silence his opponents, and destroy the democracy Weber was trying to build.
It's chilling.
It is. Weber, the great liberal who wanted to protect freedom, inadvertently helped design the legal door that the ultimate dictator walked right through. He died in 1920, so he never saw it happen. But it's a chilling reminder of how rational systems can be hijacked by charismatic demagogues.
Just before he died, he gave a famous speech to students, Politics as a Vocation. It's almost like his last will and testament on the subject. He talks about two kinds of ethics a politician can have.
Yes, the ethic of ultimate ends, or conviction, and the ethic of responsibility.
Okay, what's the difference?
The ethic of ultimate ends is the moral purist, the absolutist. They say, I will always tell the truth, even if it causes the country to fall into civil war. Or, I will never use violence, even if it means innocent people will die.
They care more about their own soul being clean than about the real-world consequences.
Exactly. The ethic of responsibility, on the other hand, is the pragmatist, the true politician. They are obsessed with the question, what will be the foreseeable results of my actions?
So they're willing to make compromises.
They're willing to make deals with the devil if it leads to a better outcome for their people. They take the blame for the messy reality. Weber said a true politician needs both passion and judgment, but must ultimately be guided by the ethic of responsibility.
He had that great line about what politics is.
Politics is the strong and slow boring of hard boards.
And you have to clarify, boring as in drilling a hole, not as in dull.
That's nice.
Right. It's hard, grinding, patient work, trying to drill a hole through a very thick piece of wood. It takes passion, but also perspective. He said if you just want to feel morally pure, you should stay out of politics. If you actually want to change the world, you have to be prepared to get your hands dirty.
He was also watching the Russian Revolution unfold at this time. He wasn't exactly a fan of the Bolsheviks.
No, not at all. There's a famous story of him debating the economist Joseph Schumpeter in a coffee house in Vienna. Schumpeter was kind of intrigued, even excited by this great socialist experiment.
And Weber.
Weber was furious. He slammed his fist on the table and said, this won't be a dictatorship of the proletariat, it will be a dictatorship of the official. He predicted, with perfect accuracy, that communism would just lead to more bureaucracy, not less.
How so?
If you get rid of the private capitalists, the state becomes the only boss, the only employer. The cage just gets smaller, the bars get harder, there's nowhere else to go.
And history proved him right. The Soviet Union became perhaps the most top-heavy bureaucratic state on Earth.
It did. Weber died very suddenly in June 1920. Pneumonia, which was likely a complication from the Spanish flu he'd had earlier, he was only 56.
And he left his masterpiece, Economy and Society, unfinished.
Just a pile of unorganized notes and manuscripts. It was his wife, Marianne, who spent the next several years painstakingly editing and assembling it into the book we have today. Without her, his legacy would be a fraction of what it is.
So let's zoom out. We've covered the man, his breakdown, the Protestant work ethic, bureaucracy, politics. What is the ultimate takeaway? Why does this all matter to the person listening to this on their commute to a job they're not quite sure they like?
It matters because Weber validates your feelings. If you feel alienated at work, if you feel like a number, if you feel like the magic has gone out of the world and been replaced by algorithms and spreadsheets, Weber tells you, you are not crazy.
It's not a personal failing, it's the system.
It is the structural reality of modernity. This is the deal we made. We traded enchantment for efficiency. We gained antibiotics and iPhones and global supply chains, but we lost the sense that the world is alive with inherent meaning.
And the iron cage. Is there a way out, or are we just stuck?
Weber didn't offer an easy exit. He wasn't like Marx, who promised a revolution that would fix everything and lead to utopia. He was more of a stoic. He basically said, look, this is the cage. It's not going away. The question is, how will you live within it?
So it comes back to that word vocation or calling.
Yes, the Puritans had a calling from God. In our disenchanted secular world, Weber says you have to choose your own God. You have to find your own daemon, your own purpose. You have to decide for yourself what is worth serving, even if there's no cosmic guarantee that you're right.
That quote at the very end of the Protestant Ethic really sticks with me. He has this chilling warning about the last men of this development.
Oh, it's devastating. Specialists without spirit, sensualists without heart. This nullity imagines that it has attained a level of civilization never before achieved.
He was looking right at us. He was looking at our obsession with data, with optimization, with personal comfort, with life hacks. And he saw a profound hollowness at the core.
It's a challenge. He's not just describing the world. He's daring us to prove him wrong, to find some kind of spirit inside the machine.
And you.
That's the question. Can you find meaning in the strong and slow boring of hardboards? Can you master the rules of the system without letting the system master your soul? That is the Weberian challenge for every single one of us.
So tomorrow, when you're filling out that expense report or dealing with your HOA or optimizing your sleep schedule with an app, just take a second, look at the bars of the iron cage, acknowledge it, and maybe try to find a little bit of your own why inside the endless how.
And ask yourself that fundamental question. Are you just working because you're forced to? Or have you somehow found a calling?
Max Weber, the giant who saw our present more clearly than we do. Thank you for walking us through this. It was heavy, but so necessary.
My pleasure. It's a lot to think about.
And thank you all for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.